Hi there, students. We're going to start our final social studies assignment of the year, 40 Minnesota citizenship questions. And you might remember this past Christmas time, you studied 100 U.S. citizenship questions, and I asked you 10 of them at random, and you had to answer 6 correctly. Well, this time, we have 40 Minnesota citizenship questions, and I'm going to ask you 5 of them, and you're going to have to get 3 of them correct. Much like the U.S. citizenship questions, you will get to study for them. I've provided a video here to help you study for it. And much like it, you will also get a chance to, if you, hey, you know what, you didn't pass it the first time, a day later you can try again. This must be completed by the last day of school, and I will be ready any day you want to do it. So if you, later today, if you say, hey, I've studied it, I think I'm ready, contact me and we'll get it started. But these 40 citizenship questions are just ones that I made up, unlike the U.S. ones. It's not an official list. But these 40 questions range from geography to political questions to government questions, everyday Minnesota culture, and things we've studied the past couple months in social studies class as well. So you'll probably know many of these questions already. Some you will not know. You have to be ready for all 40 because you'll receive 5 of them when you do this test with me, and you'll have to get 3 of them right. So let's begin. In what year did Minnesota become a state? That was in 1858, and the answers will be in red text. So I will ask the question, then in the next slide I will have the answer in red text. And I might have an image to go along with the answer. So Minnesota, the 32nd state in 1858. Which state borders Minnesota to the south? Not that far away from our school. Of course, it is Iowa. What country borders Minnesota to the north? You should know this, of course. It is Canada. During the Civil War, did Minnesota represent the Union or the Confederacy? And of course, Minnesota represented the Union during the Civil War. What is the capital of Minnesota? We were going to go there on Friday, May 24th, but of course that field trip was canceled, and it is St. Paul. Who were the 2 primary Native American tribes in Minnesota? So this is prior to European contact. Who were the 2 primary Native American tribes in Minnesota? You have to name both. We've studied them the last couple months. It's the Dakota and the Ojibwe. In 1805, I was sent to negotiate the first land deal in Minnesota. Who am I? That, of course, was Zebulon Pike, and that became known as Pike's Treaty, that first land deal which acquired Fort Snelling. Why is Minnesota called the land of 10,000 lakes? This one should be a pretty easy one. It's because Minnesota has over 10,000 lakes. In fact, according to the source I used, it has 11,842. By enrollment, what is the largest college or university in the state? Nope, it's not MSU. That's the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities. Which of the Great Lakes borders Minnesota? And that would be Lake Superior. Who is the current governor of Minnesota? You've probably seen him a lot in the news lately when he gives his press conferences. That is Governor Tim Walz. He is a Democrat, and he is from Mankato, so not that far away. In fact, he was our congressman before he became our governor. Why is the year 1819 on the Minnesota state flag? Maybe you've seen this flag in my classroom. If you look at the flag, it has 3 dates. One is 1819, one is 1858 for when we became a state, and one is 1893 when the state adopted the flag. But why is 1819 on the flag? That's, whoopsie, sorry about that. Construction began on Fort Snelling in 1819, and it is represented on the flag. What is the name of Minnesota's National Basketball Association team, NBA? That's, of course, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They started in Minnesota in 1989, the year I was born. So as long as I've lived, the Minnesota Timberwolves have been in the NBA. What is the name of Minnesota's WNBA team? And they started in 1999, 10 years later, and the name of the team is the Minnesota Lynx. And I just made a mistake there, if you noticed. This is number 14, and the last question was 14, so it looks like it's going to be 41 questions. So there'll be 41 questions, and you'll have to know 5 of them. You'll get 5 at random. I'll do my random number generator. But a lot of these you probably have known already. Question 14B. What is the name of Minnesota's most circulated newspaper? I get it every Sunday. It's the Star Tribune. What international tourist destination opened in 1992 in Bloomington, Minnesota? I don't know if it still has this motto, but it used to be known as the place for fun in your life, and that, of course, was Mall of America. Who is the current lieutenant governor of Minnesota? Maybe a tough question here. And it is Democrat Peggy Flanagan of St. Louis Park. What is Minnesota's state bird? It is the loon. This is the longest river in the United States and begins in Minnesota. The Mississippi River. What is the name of Minnesota's NFL team? The Vikings. Another tough one here. Who is Minnesota's Attorney General? Probably seen him in the news lately as well. Minnesota's Attorney General is Democrat Keith Ellison of Minneapolis. Which Native American group resided in southern Minnesota prior to European contact? And that was the Dakota. The Dakota were primarily in Minnesota, in the southern part of Minnesota, until 1851, when the treaties were signed. Which Native American group resided primarily in northern Minnesota? And that was the Ojibwe. The Ojibwe, I believe, signed their land deals with the Minnesota government in, I think, 1865, shortly after the Dakota Uprising. What is the name of Minnesota's Major League Baseball team? Haven't seen them in action much lately, but it's the Minnesota Twins, the 1987 and 1991 World Series champions. The Iron Range of Minnesota is located in, is it the northern part of Minnesota or the southern part of Minnesota? The Iron Range is in northern Minnesota. Corn farming in Minnesota is located primarily, isn't it, the northern part of Minnesota or the southern part of Minnesota? That would be the southern part of Minnesota. The timber region of Minnesota is located in, is it northern Minnesota or southern Minnesota? That is in northern Minnesota. This region of Minnesota typically has colder temperatures, northern or southern? Northern Minnesota typically is colder than southern Minnesota. So all the times you're complaining about the cold temperatures in southern Minnesota, They might be 10 degrees colder up in northern Minnesota. Question 27. Has a Minnesotan ever become President of the United States of America? No, that has never happened. And the reason I show these two gentlemen, in 1984, Ronald Reagan defeated Walter Mondale, and in 1968, Richard Nixon defeated Hubert H. Humphrey. Now, we've also had other Minnesotans run for president. Amy Klobuchar, Tim Pawlenty, Michelle Bachmann, Harold Stassen, but none of them have won. However, Minnesota has had 2 vice presidents. You need to name one of the 2 Minnesotan vice presidents. I'll give you a hint. You've heard their names pretty recently. The 2 vice presidents were Democrats Hubert H. Humphrey and Walter Mondale. Humphrey was Lyndon B. Johnson's vice president from 1965 to 1969, and Walter Mondale was Jimmy Carter's vice president from 1977 to 1981. How many electoral votes does Minnesota have? They've had this number for a long time, but there's rumor that we could go down 1 after the next census. We have 10. However, of course, electoral votes are based on population, and it's either us or California, I've heard, we're going to lose an electoral vote, possibly. So we might go down to 9 for the 2024 presidential election. Name one of Minnesota's 2 U.S. senators. Minnesota is represented by Democrats Amy Klobuchar of Plymouth, Minnesota, and Tina Smith of Minneapolis. What is the name of Minnesota's NHL team? It's not the North Stars anymore. It's the Wild. This world-renowned hospital is located in Rochester. It's the Mayo Clinic. Name the state that borders Minnesota to the east. That would be our friends over in Wisconsin. Name one of the 2 states that border Minnesota to the west. The 2 states that border Minnesota to the west, depending on which part of Minnesota you are, North Dakota and South Dakota. By population, what is the largest city in Minnesota? It really isn't all that close. It's Minneapolis with a population of 426,000. What is Minnesota's state fish? It's the walleye. There, I did it again. There's 2 question 35, so it looks like we have 42 questions on this thing. What is Minnesota's state flower? It's the pink lady slipper. What is Minnesota's state tree? It's the pine. What political party has won Minnesota in every presidential election since 1972? That is the Democrat Party. The last time a Republican or a non-Democrat won the state of Minnesota was in 1972 when Richard Nixon won 49 of the 50 states. Name one county in Minnesota. Well, there are 91 counties in Minnesota, and you have to name one of them, and there they all are. So I will trust that that occurred. You can grade yourself if you need to. Likewise, name one Native American reservation in Minnesota. And I'll let you grade yourself again. Here's the map. We have Red Lake, White Earth, Leech Lake, Mille Lacs, Upper Sioux, Lower Sioux, Prairie Island, Midwaukton, Fond du Lac, Grand Portage, Bois Fort. And our last question, what region of the United States is Minnesota located in? Minnesota is located in the Midwest. So once again, students, we had 42 questions. You will get 5 of them at random. You'll have to answer 3 correctly. Study this video. You probably know a lot of them already. Study the tough ones. That Attorney General question, Lieutenant Governor question might be kind of tough. Study those ones up, and you'll do just fine. Let me know if you have any questions, and let me know when you're ready to try. Remember, you can try as many times as you want. Well, I guess once per day. Once per day, and you can start today if you want to. And this must be completed by the last day of school. Thank you so much. We'll hear from you soon.